Right, this is a game from 1870. It is black to play. Pause the video and decide what would you do next to try and convert this obviously winning position into a win. Black has lots of winning moves, but anything sensible like rook a3, just get your rook off to the side and threaten a checkmate down here on the back rank. Now, there's something that's important to know as the defending side in rook and pawn versus rook, is that if you're defending against a knight's pawn or a rook's pawn, then back rank defense works. If you could magically play rook f1 in this position, you just move your rook anywhere on the first rank and there's nothing that black can do against this. Your king just stays on g1. Any clever trickery with rook checks over here, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't achieve anything. So back rank defense works against knight's pawns and it also works against rook's pawns. It doesn't work against bishop or central pawns, and that trickery is precisely how you would bust an attempt at a back rank defense. But anyway, that's from the defending side's point of view. This video is about the Lucena position, which is from the attacking side's point of view. Now, white's only really got two moves that suggest themselves here, and one of them doesn't really suggest itself that much. They might play rook f5 to block that checkmate, but sadly for white, the pawn ending is immediately and trivially lost. We can see that's gone. Okay, so it doesn't take us long to dismiss rook f5 and instead play king f1. Now black will check you off the first rank onto e2, and your king's gone to the long side of the pawn here. There isn't really a short side of a knight's pawn, but it's gone to the long side of the pawn. And the reason that's bad, generally as a rule you want to try and move your king to the short side, is that one possible defensive technique is irrelevant here because we've reached the Lucena position, or we're about to. One possible technique that the defending side can have is, you can imagine a white rook being able to deliver checks from over here. It's got lots of space on the long side. The problem is if your king's on the long side, it's going to get in the way of some of those checks. Whereas if your king was over on this side, it's not going to get in the way of the checks, although there isn't a short side with a knight's pawn. So white's had it here, basically. There is no way for white to defend this position. And black just, I say effortlessly, but black sort of moved in the right direction and did eventually convert it. So we saw king g2, this is in the game, rook h8, rook back to a3. I'm not sure why black played rook a3. I don't see what was wrong with pushing the g-pawn straight away, but they did. They played rook a3. White attacked the g-pawn, black pushed the g-pawn. White just played a waiting move. There's not really much they can do, to be honest. King h2, rook h8, king g1, attack the g-pawn, and g2. And then white played a very sensible move, rook h8. So white's kind of saying to black here, right, well, I'm stopping your king from getting out in front of its pawn with my rook on the h-file, and I'm stopping your king getting out on this side with my king. So, yeah, what are you going to do about that, basically? And we've reached the Lucena position, and every chess player has to know how to convert this position. It's arguably the most important theoretical position in all of endgame theory. I think it's 8% of chess games end up in a rook endgame, and this is one of the most common endpoints of those rook endgames. Not necessarily even reached, but just earlier on in that rook endgame, it's like, oh, if I do that, oh, then I'm on a losing side of a Lucena position, so I won't do that. Or if I do that, black can't do that because then I'm on the winning side of a Lucena position. So many other theoretical endgames end in the Lucena position. It's just the most important. It's so important that we all just know it and how to convert it. The flip side of that is it is very easy. It's a simple, sometimes called the bridge building technique of how to win this position. You'll see from some of black's moves actually in a minute that it's not clear that black did understand it. Oh, sorry, one other thing I was going to say was that It's usually demonstrated with a knight's pawn. The Lucena technique, the bridge building technique, it always works. Okay, you can do it with any pawn, except for rook's pawn, obviously, which is a draw. But once you're in that position, you can do it with any of the pawns. But it's usually demonstrated with a knight's pawn, because if it's a knight's pawn, that takes away some of the other possible winning methods. So there are other possible winning methods, but you don't need another one if you've got the technique we're about to see. Black did eventually have the technique we're about to see, so they went rook a2 check. A lot of black's moves come across like they weren't completely sure what they were doing. They played rook f2 here. I mean, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have played the check either. I'd have just shoved the rook back here and ready to deliver a check, and then bring my rook to the fourth rank, which is what we're about to see, or black's fourth rank. But the nice thing about it is that you've got 50 odd moves to work out how to do it, because, you know, other than threefold repetition, you can't actually mess this up. You've got this sort of perennial problem that your king's stuck in front of your g2 pawn. It's like, how do I get it out? And so you do have lots of tries at this, I suppose, and it comes across a bit like the black player at the time from this game in 1870. What's that, 155 years ago? Did sort of work it out. White just carried on playing sensible waiting moves with that plan of this king's not coming out this way and it's not coming out this way. So, you know, how are you going to get your king from away from your g-pawn, because you need to push your g-pawn. Black then played rook back to f6, which is a strange move. Rook f5 straight away looked to be a better move to me, but anyway, rook f6. King e2, rook e6 check. King d2. Now that's cleared a bit of space for the king to come out. Okay, but this is the point where if you don't know how to convert this, and if you were the defending side as white, you would just play on to see if your opponent knows what to do. If black then comes out, white just delivers checks. The black king either goes back, or if it tries to come out, we see check. King f3, check. Just keep checking it. King g4, check. Oh dear. Got to go back and defend the g-pawn. Check again. And if the black king goes this way, just come behind the g-pawn, and the black king's got to come back again. And at this point, your heart might start filling up. It's a strange metaphor. Did your heart fill up? You might become what's the word? Optimistic, say, about your drawing chances. You might start thinking, oh, okay, black doesn't actually know what they're doing here. But more likely, unfortunately, you're going to see that the player with the black pieces does know what they're doing. In this game, a lot of the moves that have been played already looked a little bit like black didn't know what they were doing, but now found the right idea. The bridge building starts with rook e5. Okay. I had, sadly, the losing side of a Lucena position at the British Championships this year, and my opponent had already played a different rook and pawn versus rook ending extremely well, much to my annoyance, because I knew it inside out, but then he demonstrated he did too. We got to the Lucena position, and I think his rook was on e8. It might have been an f pawn he had, I can't remember. But he played this, and as soon as he played that move, I knew he knew what he was doing, and I just resigned. It wasn't, given how he played the previous part of the ending, I wasn't particularly surprised to see that he also knew how to convert the Lucena position. He did it all just effortlessly as well. He just played everything instantly. I massively outgraded him, took a massive hit on rating points. Very annoyed, but he was a nice guy, so it was all right. Rook e5, and then white just carried on playing waiting moves in the game, and now the point of this rook e5 move is that now the king can come out, because the rook being on black's fourth rank, or the fifth rank of the chessboard as we look at it, is going to provide that that cover that you need. Okay, so this time, in the game, sorry, white played rook g7. This time, if white carried on playing rook f8 check, king g4 check, there's the block. So that's the thing you need to know. I mean, personally, I wouldn't have played rook a3 there. I would have just pushed the g pawn. I think we can get to the the Lucena position there much more quickly. And now I wouldn't bother with all the funny checks and rook f2 business that black did. I would bring the rook back, check, get the king off this way, and then just bring the rook to the fourth rank, ready to get my king out. And then block with the rook. That's it. That's how you convert these positions. In the game, white saw that was happening and at this stage played rook g7, saying, oh, now what are you going to do? And black's like, all right, well, you don't want me building a bridge there? I'll come and put my bridge a bit closer to the pawn. Okay. And in this position here, white resigned. So yeah, arguably the most important theoretical position in all of rook endgame theory, and by extension all of endgame theory. But the good news is that it's very easy.